everyone, it's Jennifer from Flux. In this video, we're going to learn how to crochet this beautiful, smooth sailing infinity scarf. This is a wonderful, easy beginner Tunisian crochet project. If you've never tried Tunisian crochet, I am going to walk you through this entire project stitch by stitch. It is an enjoyable, interesting crochet skill to have, and it's a really fun way to sort of mix things up, mix your projects up a little bit, and it produces this really lovely, wonderfully textured fabric, and it's very dense and warm and cozy. So this has been a really fun project, and I hope you can join me as we make this beautiful infinity scarf. Now, I made a big loop here, and I made it in such a way so you can double it up and just have like a nice little cozy snug cowl as well. So we're going to be learning how to make the scarf. We're going to just be making like a basic scarf, and then at the end we're going to seam it up. You don't have to seam it up, it's totally up to you. We're just using one ball of yarn for this project too. So if you have like a single ball of yarn that you need something to use it for, this is a great project for that as well. Now let me give you some dimensions. The finished circumference of this is 51 inches all the way around, and then the width is about 5 inches wide, okay? And we're gonna learn how to do all the stitch work, talk about the supplies, and finish it up as well. For this project, you'll need a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle, a ruler or tape measure is super helpful to kind of measure as you go along if you're after a specific size. We're gonna be using a Tunisian crochet hook today. Like I mentioned before, this is a Tunisian crochet project, so you'll need a different hook. I'm going to be using a 6mm J crochet hook for this. Now, this is one style. There are other styles. This one happens to be made of wood. They come in metal, other materials too. But this one has a cord, like a flexible cord with like a bead at the end of it. So that's one style. You can also get a long, straight Tunisian crochet hook. It's really a personal preference. Some people like the sturdiness of holding the longer hook. Some people like the more flexible hook. So it's really up to you. What I would recommend and what I did when I was learning was I got my hands on both styles and I tried both styles and kind of figured out what I liked best. I sort of interchange a little bit, but I do think I like the sturdier long one, but it's totally up to you. A lot of people prefer the more flexible one. So whatever you use though, you need a 6mm J crochet hook. All right, let's talk about this yarn. This scarf is made using just one ball of this yarn. This is called Feels Like Butter, which is such a cute little name. This is made by Lion Brand Yarn, and I'm using the Dusty Blue colorway. It does come in dye lots as a side note, so if you decide to use more than one ball and make it longer or wider, etc., just know that it comes in dye lots and you need to match the dye lots to get an even, consistent look of your coloring on your scarf, okay? Now, each ball of this is 218 yards. This is a 4 medium on the yarn weight scale, and it recommends a G 4mm crochet hook. However, like I mentioned before, we are going to be using the 6mm J crochet hook. This is a very dense fabric. It's very thick and warm and cozy. And to get a little bit more drape, I went up a couple of hook sizes just to give me a little bit more drape so it wasn't so dense. I didn't want any stiffness. So because this, when you're working Tunisian crochet, I like to go up at least a hook size or two just to like open it up a little bit, okay? And as you can see, it's still very dense, but it kind of gives us a little bit more drape, okay? You might want to experiment if you're not sure. You can try different hook sizes and just make up a little swatch if you're not sure. But if you look for a 4 medium yarn that recommends that G hook, you'll be just fine, and the 6mm J crochet hook as well. To begin, we're going to put a slip knot on our hook, and I'm going to come way in so you can really see what I'm doing here. All right. So what we want to do is put a slip knot on our hook. Wrap the yarn around your fingers to make a loop. Bring the yarn behind the loop. Reach in with your hook. Bring up a loop and tighten, okay? Next, we're going to do our starting chain. So we're going to do a chain the way a lot of projects start. Now, there's no special stitch count for this. I'm going to be doing 20 chains to start, but you can really do as many chains as you like to get the width of your scarf, okay? So we're going to do 20 chains. So to make a chain, wrap the yarn around the hook and bring it through the loop. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. So here's our starting chain. Now you don't want it to be super tight because we're going to work back into these chains. You don't want it to be too loose either because the bottom edge of your scarf will look a little bit messy. Okay, so just try to like strike a balance with loose enough to work into, but not overly tight either. Okay. Next, we're going to start working across and getting some loops on our hook. This is where things are going to look a little bit different than what you have seen before, maybe with regular crochet projects, okay? So in the second chain from the hook, now this loop on the hook does not count. We're going to count 1 and 2 chains, and we're going to work our first bringing up a loop, okay, if you will. So insert the hook into that second chain from the hook. And what you're going to do is wrap the yarn around the hook and bring up a loop and just leave it on there, okay? Go into the next chain, wrap yarn around hook, bring up a loop, and you're just going to leave it right on the hook, okay? We're going to do this all the way across. We're going to do these together. Okay, so just continue across, bring up a loop, bring up a loop, all the way across, and we're going to have all these loops on our hook. Now, I know whenever I'm learning something new, a new stitch or a new technique, it's important to have nice loose hands, not too loose to where you're dropping things, but I know sometimes when we're learning, and I do get this question a lot, so I wanted to bring it up, that there's a lot of tightness when you're learning. So just try to keep your hands nice and relaxed as you work whenever you're learning something new. I do get questions from people who are learning about their work being tight, their chains being tight, or their stitches being tight. Some people just work tight in general. But you want to just make sure your loops are not too tight. Okay, so we're just working into each chain, bringing up a loop, leaving it on there. Bring up a loop, leave it on there, and I'm kind of like spreading these out a little bit as I work, so it's not all bunchy. And then we're here at the last chain, so we're just going to do the same thing, okay? So here is our handiwork. Okay, so now we're going to work the other way, and we're going to get all the loops off the hook, okay? So the first thing we want to do is work our first loop. So what you're going to do is wrap the yarn around the hook and bring it through the first loop, and then that's it. Then you're going to wrap the yarn around the hook and you're going to bring it through. Now you might need to slide your work up again. Wrap the yarn around the hook and bring it through 2 loops. Okay, so bring it through 2 loops that time. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through 2 loops. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through 2 loops. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through 2 loops. I'm going to get a little bit more yarn. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through 2 loops. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through 2 loops. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through 2 loops. Wrap yarn around hook, 2 loops, 2 loops. And we're just doing this all the way across, okay? All right, we're getting towards the end here. Bring it through 2 loops. Bring it through 2 loops. 2 loops, 2 loops, and then you have 2 loops left, yarn around hook, bring it through those last 2 loops. Okay, we have some really interesting things happening here, some neat texture. Okay, now we're ready to go back in the other direction. You should have 1 loop on your hook. Now if we look at all this, we have all these vertical bars across. We're going to be working into those bars, and we're going to, you'll see that at the beginning of your row here, now let me grab my tapestry needle so I can really point this out to you. You'll see right below your hook, there is the first bar. We're not going to work into that bar. We're going to go to this next one and begin that way, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to come up under the bar with our hook. Wrap the yarn around the hook, bring up a loop, and leave the loop on there. Come up under the next bar, bring up a loop, come up under the next bar, bring up a loop, come up under the next bar, bring up a loop, and you can see we're making some really nice progress here, and we're just going to do this all the way across. So I know that leaving stitches on a hook might feel odd if you've never done this before, but you can see it's pretty simple to just do this all the way across, okay? So we're just going up under the next bar, bring up a loop, and leaving it on, okay? We're just doing this all the way across, just like that, okay? Work across. I'm going to get a little bit more yarn. My yarn ball is kind of sneaking over. Come up under the next bar and the next bar, all the way across. Now at this point you may start to see the benefit of going up a hook size, because our fabric is getting pretty lofty, and it keeps it nice and kind of, you know, drapey and still very warm. Okay, I wanted to show you when you come up to the end, you'll see that there's one more bar, and it's really off to the side here. Let me grab my little pointer. It's really off to the side. It kind of just frames it in, really. So what you want to do, that's your last bar. You're also going to come up under that bar, wrap the yarn around the hook, and bring up a loop for that, okay? Okay, so this is all you really need to know to move forward with your scarf. We're going to do some more together, just because if you've never done this before, I like to see it maybe twice, you know. So remember that first loop on our hook, we wrap yarn around hook, we bring it through just 1 loop that first time, okay? So remember that, and then we're going to work across the way we did before. And this may seem a little familiar because we've done this before. We're just going to wrap the yarn around the hook, bring it through 2 loops, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through 2 loops, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through 2 loops, wrap yarn around hook, and we're just doing this all the way across, okay? Now as you do this more and more, you'll perhaps build up some speed, but I wouldn't worry about that at first when you're learning. You want to just focus on accuracy. The speed will come all by itself. Okay, we're just wrapping yarn around hook, bring it through both loops, all the way across, okay? And also, when you're learning a new technique, I'm going to get a little bit more yarn, you'll find too that you have a special type of hook preference. If you like the straight, sturdy one or the one with the cord, it's up to you. And you'll also figure out how to hold your hook, whatever feels best to you. Okay, so I'm just wrapping yarn around hook, bring it through 2 loops until I have just 1 loop left. Okay, so here is our next row. And as you can see, we haven't worked back into those bars yet, so you can see the difference. This is one we've worked back and forth down here, and then up here it looks kind of almost hollow because we haven't worked back into them yet, okay? So let's do this once again. And also, even though we're repeating this, at any time you can pause the video, you can slow motion the video. Please go at your own pace. So remember this first bar right below our hook. We're not going to touch that. We're going to leave him alone. But we're going to go into the next one like that. Wrap yarn around hook, bring up a loop, leave it on there. Go up under the next bar, wrap yarn around hook, bring up a loop, and we're just doing this all the way across. This will seem familiar because we've done this before, okay? So for each row, it's a little bit different with Tunisian crochet. There's a forward pass and there's a pass in the opposite direction to complete the row, okay? So we're just getting all these loops back on our hook so that we can come back in the other direction, okay? So, like I said before, feel free to slow motion the video, pause, watch this as many times as you need to, but you're just going to keep working back and forth, getting all those loops onto your hook in this forward pass. Then you're going to work backward pass, if you will, and take the loops off. So you're putting loops on, taking loops off. And then don't forget the very last loop kind of is on the very end there. You're going to grab that one too, wrap yarn around hook, bring up a loop, okay? If you get a little bit turned around or a little bit lost in your stitching, what I do, I also knit. So I find that this tip is helpful. It's a kind of a knitting tip, but when I knit and also when I do this, I like to count after each time I put loops on, because right now we have a very similar look to knitting, right? I like to count all the loops. Just make sure you have the same number each time, okay? Otherwise, you may be increasing or decreasing. Okay, so let's go backwards again and do this one more time together. And then after that, we've done it a few times and we can kind of depart and work on our scarves, okay? So what we're gonna do, remember, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through just one loop that first time. Wrap yarn around hook, and I like to slide my stitches up because I like to hold my hook back here and work like that. When I do other types of crochet, I hold my hook way up high, but when I do Tunisian crochet, I hold it back and sort of like, almost like a magic wand. Okay, so we did that first loop, then we're going to wrap yarn around hook, and we're going to bring it through the first two loops that you see. Yarn around hook, two loops, yarn around hook, two loops, yarn around hook, two loops, and we're just going to do this all the way across. Okay? Now let's finish this pass together. And then we'll be ready to kind of move forward and keep working on our scarves on our own, okay? We're just going through two loops all the way across, okay? Let's get that loop. And you're just going to do this until there's one loop left on your hook, okay? And there you go. So as you can see, the top where we just came back looks hollow. The little boxes look empty. So we're going to go back across, and we've already done that. So what you're going to keep doing is working forward, picking up the loops, working backward, putting them back down, okay? And so let me slide my hook around here. So just keep repeating what we've been doing over and over and over again. You're going to use up your yarn, whatever yarn you're using or amount you're using. If you want to do a full length scarf like me, you know, feel free to do that. If you want to do something a little shorter, you could seam it up and make a cowl, or even a headband or something like that. If you want to just kind of practice a little bit, you could also use some cotton yarn and do a little dishcloth as well. So just keep going with your scarf, and I'm going to get some length on mine, and then when we rejoin, we will learn how to finish our piece. Okay, so I've been working my rows over and over again, and I just wanted to show you my handiwork here. I have about 52 inches in length of my scarf. Now you can keep going, but what I'm going to do is we're going to seam this together to make sort of an infinity scarf. And then I made it so that it could easily be doubled up and be like a nice cozy cowl as well. So I have just a tiny bit of yarn, just enough to kind of finish up. So you'll want to, when you're ready to stop, save yourself a little bit more yarn to do one more row on this. And you'll want to end where you had just one loop on your hook. So when you go across and back, cross and back, cross and back, you want to come back and so you have one loop on the hook. Now finishing is really easy. You don't want to end it this way because see how the top of this sort of looks see-through? You don't want to end like that because it won't look as nice. But I'm gonna show you how to finish this off, okay? So all you're gonna do is you're gonna go into, and actually let me zoom way in so you can see what I'm doing here. You wanna go and put your hook in that first loop, kind of like how we did before, okay? And then bring up a loop just like that, okay? Then what you're gonna do, instead of going into this next loop like we have been doing, what you're gonna do is bring this first loop here through the loop that's already on your hook. Just like that, okay? Then you're gonna go into the next bar. See that little bar there? You go into that next bar, bring up a loop. Now bring that loop through the loop already on your hook. And see how it's closing off the top? It's kind of like when we do, if any of you knit, it's kind of like how we bind off in knitting. It reminds me very much of the basic bind off. Okay, so go into that next loop, bring up a loop, bring that loop through the loop already on your hook, just like that. And that's giving you a nice flat edge, okay? And we're just gonna do this all the way across, okay? Bring up a loop, bring it through. Bring up a loop, bring it through. You're just gonna do that into every one of these vertical stitches all the way across. And I'm going to move my wood bead at the end of my hook is like dragging all around my table. It's a little distracting. All right, and we're just doing this all the way across. So every stitch you come to, bring up a loop, bring it through. Insert, bring up a loop, bring it through. Just like that. Okay, so if you feel comfortable, you can move right ahead. But if you want to hang in there with me and we'll do these together, feel free to do that as well. Okay, so just go all the way through, all the way across with your loops. Just like that. And we're coming up to the edge. So you're going to do this until you just have, you know, your last bar here, okay? So I'm coming up and now, see, remember my last bar on the side, sort of off to the side here. We're gonna also go into that one, bring up a loop and bring it through, okay? Looks great. Nice, clean, straight edge, just like that, okay? Now, with this Tunisian simple stitch, it's naturally gonna curl a little bit. So the sides, the edges, see our starting edge curls a little bit, but that's okay. That adds to it, I think, a little bit. And we're also seaming the edge, so it will, the starting and ending edges will be straight. Okay, so then what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut the yarn, and I'm gonna cut a little bit of a longer tail because I'm gonna use that tail to seam as well. So let's cut, oh, I don't know, 18 to 24 inches. That's more than enough. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna let a little bit of this out, wrap the yarn around your hook and just pull it all the way through that long tail. All right, so we're done with our hook. We're going to set it aside for now, and I'm just going to pull that tight. This is very similar to knitting, the way you end this. Okay, so we can move our yarn aside, and I'm going to grab my tapestry needle. And what we're going to do, I'm going to thread, actually, before we do this part, let's hop over here for just a second. And I don't know about you, but this one ball project, it was very surprising that I got this much length with one ball of yarn. So pretty cool. All right, we're going to thread our tail that's on the other end here just to get it out of the way, okay? I'm going to go in the back here and I'm just going to travel through the back loops of these stitches. We're going to go in one direction with our tail and then we're going to come back in the other direction with our tail as well, okay? So just go in one direction, in the other direction. And now what we're going to do is come back down to the other side with our tail here. Thread your tapestry needle once again. And let's straighten everything out. So we don't want a bunch of twists because if we seam it and there's a bunch of twists in our work, you'll have twists all through your scarf. Now, once again, like I said before, you can just wear this as a regular scarf, totally fine, but I want to seam mine. I really like infinity scarves because when you're moving around a lot, like if you're running errands or something, or you have to move around or whatever, your scarf stays put because it's hooked around your neck, okay? So I just laid everything nice and flat, and if you notice, it's inside out. The side that faced us while we worked the whole time, they're both facing in on themselves. So let's turn, and everything's nice and straight. And what I'm going to do is line everything up like a little sandwich. Okay? So I'm just going to hold my edges together and I'm going to go in my corners and we're just going to do a very simple whip stitch. Okay? So I'm going to go in both layers just like that. And if I need to, things aren't exactly laying flat, there we go. I can kind of pick that up and move it if I need to. And we're just going to seam this all the way across. Now this is a fairly narrow scarf. I did that for two reasons. One, because I plan on doubling mine up when I wear mine around my neck. But also, when you're learning a new stitch, I think it's nice to do a simple project, nothing too big. So I thought a nice little scarf on more the narrow side would be helpful. And we just want to line things up a little bit. You might notice one edge is a little bit stretchier than the other, but that's okay. Just keep lining it up as you go. And because we're doing the whip stitch with the same yarn, it's going to be pretty invisible when we're finished. Okay, so we're just going all the way across with our stitches. And I can't tell you enough how soft and cozy and warm this yarn is. I really love it. All right, so we're coming up to the end here, and whenever I seam two pieces together, a lot of times crochet and knit has rounded edges. It doesn't have like straight, sharp edges. So if you seam two pieces together with rounded edges, you're going to have a dip, okay? So to avoid that, I like to come out to the side just a little bit, and that helps that quite a bit. All right, once you get to your last stitch, you're not going to pull it all the way through. You're going to leave a loop and you're going to send your needle through that loop and just tie it in a knot right then and there. And I like to do two. So go back in it again, pull it almost all the way through, send your needle through that loop and tighten. Okay. Now, before you take your needle off, go ahead and weave the end in right then and there while it's still threaded. Let's go in one direction here. And I like to come back in the other direction to lock that tail into place. You want to stay on those back loops so you don't see a tail traveling through the front of your work. And then we're just going to give it a little snip. And we are done. All right, so let's turn it right side out. Our seam looks great, nice and invisible. I'm just going to flip this around. And we have a lovely little infinity scarf. Simple, easy, just a really basic cozy scarf, okay? So, like I said before, you could wear this just kind of loose around your neck, or you can twist it a little bit and just have this super cozy, cuddly little cowl up against your neck. So that is how you crochet the smooth sailing infinity scarf. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest Fiber Flux video updates. Thanks again.